Kopi Sanangan. We are back with another episode of Sip Sip with Egan. My name is Nadira Ilana, and we are here today with Egan, who I will be asking a few questions about. Because we're going to do something a little bit different here. So, Egan.
Yes.
So, how do we know each other?
Power to the People Party.
Oh.
Panjang.
Oh, that
was the first time we met.
Oh yeah, I said the planting that time, kan? Is this the one guy? The one at the beach?
A lot of things happened, man. We were like in a closed space with a few boxes of aerosol. We were doing like this mural, and everyone was there. Everyone was high on aerosol fumes.
That was on the beach, ka?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember. I was just flying back from KL at the time, and then nobody could pick me up, and I had all my gear with me, and said terus lari ke sana kan, and then I took a cab to Tanjung Aru, and I was like shooting, and then I fell off the stage and set the planting, and then somebody, I'm malas to say his name, but he like had to go and pull me up. Yeah, but I fell like a few feet down to the ground on the sand with like my camera, and that was me. Yeah, I don't think you were there for it lah, but I was just too busy.
It was there was a lot of things happening. Just macam a lot of old friends or sana. Kalau ingat balik kan, like these are the people yang in the art scene, like if that was considered day one. Power to the People Party was a big first for a lot of people lah, I guess. I mean, especially me lah. It was the day yang I started mingling with people. I started noticing that I'm not alone doing weird sketches. I'm not alone with this, fantasy kind of ideas in my head. And when I met you guys, I feel at home. I feel like, because when I share my thoughts, it echoed, but you guys were not like, okay, no, we're not going to do that. This is like too crazy. But you guys like, this is something that you are familiar with. So, I found home. Yeah, click. Yes.
Yeah, no, I feel the same as well. So I mean, like how that started also, at the time I had just graduated from uni and I got my first job in KL, but I had asked them for a little bit of leeway because at the time it was like the no coal plant movement, kan? Like they wanted to build a coal plant on the East Coast, and then so I volunteered my time lah, because actually even till today we haven't been to the site juga lah. But environmental issues have always been something that I've cared about. And hari ni pun pakai Captain Planet punya baju.
That's a nice t-shirt. Ragging.
Yeah, sorry?
It's very rare.
Yeah, it's just cotton on, but still, like I it was a kind of a bit of a hero growing up lah. So I think I was quite lucky we were quite lucky, growing up in Sabah here, because you're always surrounded by nature. Tapi memang juga lah got like environmental clubs and stuff, that I joined when I was growing up. So it's always been like an issue that's been close to my heart lah. And I think I'm doing more to express it now lately, especially since MCO. Yeah, but that was actually, you're right, that was actually quite invigorating, because I mean that's when we met each other, but then also, what was it? Yeah, I think if I think about it now, like a lot of the activists and the artists that we work together then are still very close now.
Yeah.
That's how we sort of like built our community.
Family.
Yeah, from there.
Family.
Really. Yeah.
Jump Fast and Furious.
Exactly. Yeah, because that's also when started doing the murals, and then Libby also was like part of it too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we were all hanging out a fair bit then.
Libby, we miss you.
We miss Libby so much. Dia tahu dia di mana sudah.
Yeah. Last I checked, Sandakan.
Yeah. But I mean, it was also, I think before that, a lot of us felt that, KK was really quiet. You know, growing up in KK as an artist or somebody who wants to be creative kan, it was like super quiet ba. And then tiba-tiba semua orang macam muncul ba at the same time. And then ada geng-geng ni mau pergi buat, pergi buat mural and stuff.
I guess it was the right time. Because of all this political hoo-ha. And then we were frustrated enough, we were angry enough to make a presence. Kan?
Yeah.
Being back with all the auntie, kakak, abang, like Cynthia Ong, Ilan, they were like, come kids. And then we were like following, and then now I guess we can say we're kind of leading. And I don't know.
Yeah, in some ways. But I'm kind of glad that we...
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah, no,
Sorry.
it's okay. It's somebody else's emergency. No, but I'm glad that we kind of came from that. I'm glad that we kind of began from that. Yeah.
That's different. Apa tu? Police?
Elections ba sekarang?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so all the YB are in town at the moment.
Welcome YBs.
Thanks YBs.
We'll go to you later.
Yeah, it's like
Bila mau berhenti ni?
hopefully after the 26th. Yeah.
That's a long time. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, no, but I'm glad that we kind of started from, that activist scene because it showed that our artists came from having a message and wanting to say something. I mean, because I also got exposed to like the art scene in KL also around the same time lah. And KL's art scene at the time also was a lot more driven by, what you have to say as Malaysians, like the politics of it. But then after a while, that sort of petered out, and now KL is kind of a lot more quiet. Everybody's kind of like just like looking after their rice bowl. People are trying to be influencers, and trying to get all their hits and stuff like that. So because that becomes their currency. But I feel that in Sabah, in many ways, we've actually stayed true to our roots. But one privilege that we have also is that because Sabah is small, because KK is small, kan, it's easy for us to be able to confront our politicians, or talk to them like in a very sort of like almost like a samarata almost kind of way. So that's one thing that we are. I think it's why it's easier for us in some ways to have something to say, but also because of the lack of representation of East Malaysians juga kan, macam Sabah and Sarawak, we feel like we're in such, like nothing to lose already, but things are so bad politically sometimes, you feel like you're colonized in your own country, that macam whenever you have art kan, it feels like an opportunity to say something, as opposed to just like, saja mau buat entertainment. That's how we entertain ourselves, by, like getting our rocks off lah, through art. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
I just want to pick a point when you say all these YBs, the leaders are like samarata, because I remember last time when we were all like literally samarata, when we used to be like friends of YB Juns Wong. We were like, we hang out together apa semua kan, and in Facebook we comment like their friends of friends, Henry, Nick, semua tu, and tiba-tiba jadi YB, and then I feel like, okay, mula-mula this YB is my clique punya gang, but I don't know, is it tradition or is it culture? Lama kan makin jauh, and you feel like even dulu kau komen confirm boleh baca, but now it's like kalau saya bercakap dia mau dengar sudah kah? I mean, he can say yes, I'm listening, but is it happening? Are we?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, it doesn't have to begin or end on social media or on Facebook to get their attention. I think that where, like, Krakow Art Group or me or like Pangrok Sulap are, the few of us are concerned, kan, we know that we should and can operate without political support juga, ba. And I think if anybody has really ingrained that, ideology in us, it's been Ilan. Ilan has been like such a huge influence on us in that respect, lah. So I mean, we're lucky to have that god mama, who's made it really just okay and safe. And because we have this family, because we have this unit of artists, who have each other's backs, like we are also, I don't know, we also try to keep each other honest, lah, about things. And that's actually a really beautiful thing, because I don't think, not everybody has that, but there's something about the water here that we're able to do that. So I feel quite fortunate about that, because where film is concerned, sometimes I don't feel like I fit in as a filmmaker in this industry, not just because I'm a Sabahan, like trying to push, trying to break into mass media, but also just because sometimes when I see suasana film or in the industry, a lot of it, because there's so much money that goes into filmmaking as well, a lot of it becomes about money laundering, ba. People will just like chase after grants and things like that, but then at the same time, it's like a lot of money goes missing, a lot of money disappears, and people are just looking for the grants to do productions and things like that, but the thing is, like, I find that to be like such a waste, because when you have an opportunity to tell your own story, it's very satisfying, and you can do a lot for your community, and to help people. And it's like, why would you spend your time doing anything else but that? And I'm not saying that like every film has to have a call to action, or every film has to be an advocacy thing, but like when you entertain somebody, but but when you entertain somebody, or you cheer up somebody as well, or you make something that makes you feel like at home, that is a great contribution to the world. So when I see people yang kejar duit saja, just to make the production, those films don't end up going anywhere. And I think that where I've been different, or I try to work smart, not just keep making stuff all the time, as much as I can, lah. And what I mean by that is just that when I look back on it now and think about like who I was when I started studying films, I had a lot of really good instincts, and my good instincts were that like to work your way backwards. So I always try to think about, where does my film get seen? So a lot of people, they only think about production setakat macam pergi shoot itu film, pasang kamera, pasang ini, pasang itu, tapi diorang tidak fikir tentang dia punya impact and where it gets seen. So I'm definitely not the first Sabahan filmmaker. There are definitely a lot of people, tapi the people who are making a lot of the straight to DVD films or the telemovies and things like that, that's one way of doing things. But I think like where we were coming up during that time, we were fortunate because we had like internet, social media. It was the first time, I think around like 2010, 2011, that we started to talk about our own history as Sabahans, only because we had Facebook. We had no resources for that before. Everything was just like, kalau baca dalam buku sejarah pun, mana mau cari Sabah ni? There was like nothing.
True.
Even when I made Silent Riot, and I saw it at Freedom Film Fest, I was just like shocked, because I was like, wow, I've never seen a Sabahan on a big screen like that before. And then because of that Freedom Film Fest format, where they screened the films in different places, and I saw the impact that it had on people, then I started to be a bit more strategic about where I place the film and who sees it, and that's become really important. Because especially the danger with I'm just making films or videos that just go straight online, it can also go nowhere. Yeah, so that's why it's really important to sort of like campaign or to strategize, where it gets seen. It's important to know your genres. It's important to be able to tell the difference between a telemovie and a straight-to-DVD film. A difference between an advertisement and a short film. Because each of these different forms have different lives or different journeys. When they're put out there, and I think not a lot of people are very aware of that. Not even in KL sometimes. So yeah.
I mean, I am not aware of this. I always think like, okay, Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. In focus. Ada merah? Okay. I always thought like, kalau kau bikin film bagus, memang orang mau tengok lah. And you don't have to like, I mean you can market like sikit, but it will speak by itself. I never thought like there's all these campaigns and
Well, it's important to think about, where your film goes. So, for example, why I started programming films a few years ago. I think maybe in around 2016. No, the first time I programmed a short film screening, I think might have been in 2014, 2015. I can't remember now. But the reason was because whenever I made my films, like I made a couple of films in 2012. One is Elastic, and then the other one was The Silent Riot. Yeah, thank you. But when I screened it in KL, I noticed that audiences don't respond to it the same way as they respond to it in Sabah, because there was such little representation of East Malaysia at the time that they couldn't place us. It was really macam betul-betul zaman macam, oh, you're from Sabah, how long have you been in Malaysia? Like, welcome to Malaysia kind of thing.
typical questions.
And it was just especially hard for me because I was coming in there as a storyteller, as a director. I mean, I don't want to just like go in and be a director just like that, but I naturally gravitate towards the storytelling side, and in a country that's like very like still thinks of themselves as Malay, Indian, and Chinese. Macam I noticed like my Sabahan or like Chinese Sabahans or maybe like Bugis or Melayu punya Sabahans, kalau dirang pergi sana, dirang can still assimilate, but even though I didn't know so much about my dusun culture, kan memang I didn't feel like I fit in, or there was a place for my narrative. So I always felt like I was getting pushed out. They're like, okay, we want to do this Kamatan stuff, but they cannot tell the difference between Sabah and Sarawak. Tapi saya pula yang kalah. Saya pula yang tidak dapat peluang untuk bikin sepunya cerita sendiri. And there is an urgency. There's a sense of urgency with that, because I know that the reason why I don't know about my own culture is because there's no material for it, and then it becomes cyclical. So what I started to do was that I wanted to put together my first East Malaysian short film program, and that was quite challenging in itself, because at the time susah mau cari ba. And then kebanyakan macam film yang time tu, like I could still mostly only find documentaries, like short documentaries, and then I tried to pitch it as well to a film club in Malaysia. And I got not just rejected, but I got kicked out of the WhatsApp group because they're like, the quality is not good. But I was like, no, but we have to show these East Malaysian films so that people know what we look like. I got kicked out, but Urbanscapes said yes to it. I mean, through but they gave me a slot for it. And then when I screened it to people then realized like, oh, East Malaysia has a different voice. So I have this my philosophy when it comes to like programming.
Wait, let me cut you there.
But, sure.
Were you the only Sabahan who made noise like this?
As far as I know I was the only one.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's like a lonely battle there.
Yeah, I work alone, or I work on my own a fair bit. But I have a lot of friends. I think even my friendship style, I don't have a particular close-knit group, but I have a lot of very close friends, a lot of very good friends all over.
In KL, ada banyak like Sabahan filmmakers?
No, but it got to a point where I got stamped as Sabah girl lah. My friends who like really don't come around these parts would be like, oh, when we think of Sabah, we think of Nadira, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so bad. Yeah.
Oh god.
No, I mean Daphne Iking also has been like a voice as well. But like I said a lot of them, I'm not saying her but a lot of the East Malaysians yang pergi sana kan, they have to change their accent, pergi Semenanjung punya accent. And for me, like, sudahlah sebenarnya Melayu teruk, and I get there and then it's just like,
yes.
I get told not to speak like a Sabahan, which is the only way I know how to speak bahasa. And then some more also I was denied the opportunity to learn about my language. Don't speak Kadasan Dusun, learn bahasa Malaysia. And then after that, I pergi ke Semenanjung, and then dirang bilang don't talk like a normal. I got so traumatized as well, because I was working for somebody, and they were like, Nadira, stop speaking in your fake Sabahan accent, speak in a normal Malaysian accent. And then after that,
what's with this bar?
yeah, basically, and it was so hurtful, and it was very stressful because I am not good at being anything else but me, you know. And I think as a director, especially, I had to really hold true to that, because who the hell else am I gonna be? Why do I want to tell somebody else's story? You know, when I go back, you know, and I was also very conscious of the fact that macam, you know, growing up at the time kan macam I had a lot of friends yang masuk juvie ba.
Oh.
Yeah, so around 2012 begitu kan, in the 2010s and things like that. I had a friend who died in juvie, and then I noticed that I had a lot of friends as well. Even though they came from good families, everything kan, macam tapi dirang masuk penjara juga, or they joined gangs. You know, just because it felt like they had nothing to do, like they had no morale, no confidence in themselves. And I started to realize that a lot of that was probably tied to the idea that when you don't have that representation, kau selalu fikir orang luar saja ba yang bagus. And that's an effect of colonialism as well. Like, colonialism isn't just about people taking your shit. Colonialism is also, the effects of colonialism is somebody is projecting onto you. Kenapa kau tidak cakap macam aku? Kenapa, why don't you, why don't you dress like me? Like, why don't you talk like me? You know, if you don't do these A, B, and C, kan, you're not civilized.
Your baju kadazan should be velvet.
Yeah.
What the hell? It's not supposed to be velvet.
It's so 80s. Some people trapped in the 80s. Really?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah.
Terima kasih, bos.
Terima kasih. Yeah.
Bagus ada kru sudah.
Yeah, no, you have no idea, man. So even when I was shooting in 2012, why it was hard for me to stay on here in Sabah to continue production, you know, Katak Chwala is like a very good friend of mine. He was there also last night at our short film premiere. But sengsara ba, because it's like I had the privilege of going to film school. You know, you learn how to work in the studio, you learn how to work with cameras, you know, and all these things kan. But then
Itu bukan YB.
Yeah. But yeah, so I had the privilege of working together with, you know, bigger crews. I mean, even though we were just film students, I think what really formed my worldview also in some ways was that I became exposed to Southeast Asian cinema, which ironically you can't get access to as well, like that well, I mean, like in Southeast Asia itself. Selalu dia pergi ke Australia, dia pergi ke Europe saja kan, but you don't always get to see those films here. But when I was overseas, I was homesick, you know, like I wanted to move back to Malaysia and make Malaysian stories. Then I realized Malaysian stories are still, if you talk about film, are still only predominantly made by West Malaysians. Even till today, that's still the case. So Sabah we were actually making, you know, when I say films, I'm talking about like feature films, like 90 minutes and for national theatrical release. You know, so that's my benchmark. And it's shot in Sabah and made with Sabahans. Because that's agency. To me, like, what is freedom? It's being able to own your own narrative ba. So if somebody else is always telling your story for you, itu kena jajah sudah ba. That's exactly what the British or the Europeans were doing to us before, during the anthropological time, like when they're doing their anthropological things. Which here is Martin and Osa Johnson, and here is a brown woman, you know, like a native woman. So it still kind of feels like that juga, but there wasn't that representation. But then when I look at it, also I was shocked because I was getting so much sort of racism in Semenanjung at the time. But I also, sendiri, I couldn't defend myself because I don't know what Sabahans look like. I didn't know anything about Sabah history. I didn't even know about Project IC until after I finished uni. You know? So there were a lot of gaps in my sort of like mental, I don't know how you call it, but they were in my memory bank, you know, that told me or informed me of what a Sabahan identity was. So that's how I ended up making documentaries lah. I wasn't always doing documentaries, but I fell into it because that was my way of learning and reclaiming my Sabahan identity.
I imagine, like if I put you in a movie, I feel like you're this boy masuk pergi pergunungan, jumpa this sifu and learn kung fu, and now you have the skills. Now you balik to your village where the bad people roam, and then now you understand that, oh, my people are being colonized, are being raped, are being jajah, all these things. Now, but now you have skills. Now you come back and I guess you know what to do. Begitu.
I know better what to do. I think I
Ada begitu
especially there's a story arc lah. I don't know about the guy pergi ke gunung and all that stuff lah. But there's
Kung Fu Panda.
Yeah, but I have a certain story arc, but it's not that unusual because you know when we talk about decolonization theory all over the world, you know, like it's actually quite similar. So how I started to learn about all these things juga kan was actually also from my white Australian producer for when I did Big Stories. He was the one who taught me about like how to use media as a form of decolonization lah. And once I developed those tools, you know, and that's really just about working with people. I mean, like people don't realize that when you make films kan actually you learn so much about politics, you learn so much about hierarchical powers, and I'm not just talking about East versus West or whatever. I'm talking about gender. Even like, you know, do women get to be behind camera? Do women, you know, get to tell their own stories and such? Or from which perspectives? Being able to, I'm serious when I say that being able to tell your own story is a privilege. So, I mean, people keep asking about the whole like, you know, now we can put stuff on YouTube and things like that. People still don't realize that there's a big difference between being able to self-publish and being in the industry, and can you get access to those slots. My biggest beef is still kenapa cerita kamatan gawai for the ads, like kenapa orang macam production company dari Semenanjung Sejaba yang boleh buat, especially because these are indigenous stories. So why I started to identify as an indigenous filmmaker as well, memang juga saya keturunan dusun lah, even though like campur a whole bunch of things, is that when we talk to indigenous artists all over the world, you know, it's about trying to recover from cultural erasure. In some cases it's genocide. For us it's called epistemic violence. So yeah, so these are like the theories and stuff that my sifu, my white Australian sifu like taught me.
Okay, I need to do homework. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're just sharing now. But you see, like, when you look at Cambodia, kan, and they had a Khmer Rouge, you know, in the 70s, a lot of the, even, not just the intellectuals or the doctors and things like that, but a lot of the artists, kau pakai spek mata pun, they will go and they will kill you, but they came after their films and then burned them. Books also, much they tried to burn. They tried to destroy a lot of their literature, but. So when you look at the artists sekarang kan, macam they try to very actively reclaim that, to find whatever resources they have to try to be able to archive the stories, because they're like, who am I? And we were not killed, we didn't have killing fields, but epistemic violence refers to sort of like knowledge, you know, and the violence was that we were not allowed to sort of access our own selves. So a lot of people forget that actually in the 1960s, time tu kan, we didn't really have, our politicians were not really highly educated. But, yeah. So in the 1960s, I mean, Sabah and Sarawak were quite, well, not Borneo and Sarawak were quite unique in the time, because not a lot of our leaders at the time were well educated. Memang pun, you know, like people have not pieced together that the difference between the first university in Malaya and the first universities in Sabah and Sarawak is 90 years, 90 years. You know, and we come from oral traditions, but I don't have a film history. You know, we don't have a film history to speak of. So that's why, macam for me, macam what does a Sabahan film look like? Shit, I had to go and figure it out by myself, but, you know, and there's also other things that now people are starting to talk about, the Borneo Literature Bureau, and what happened to those books. Do you know about that?
No idea.
Yeah, so I think in about 1959, I might be getting my numbers wrong. Okay. Disclaimer, okay, I'm just riffing a lot of the history I remember from the top of my head. I might get some things wrong, but this is just the gist of it.
If you guys know, do comment, please.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm not trying to get everything right. That's why some people have been like kind of pissed off with me lately about it, and I'm just like, yeah,
chill.
Well, I'm just like I'm just a person, you know. I'm not like, I'll try to get things right, but sometimes I slip up lah. But anyway, But yeah, so I think in about 1959, the Borneo Literature Bureau was established in Sarawak, and that was our first publishing house. You know, we don't have written languages, right? And so when they did their first publishing house, and North Borneo also contributed, you know, they were doing stories on like our adat, our folklore, everything in multiple languages. So walaupun dia macam dalam dusun kamurut, they will still also have an English version of like the folklore, everything. So just to, you know, document these things lah. But then after 1971, which is like the national, well, yeah. So when after May 13, there was the National Cultural Policy of 1971 that tried to push for sort of like the Malay macam bahasa kebangsaan lah. But that also meant like pushing for like a Malay culture lah. You know, like Chinese and Indians have to go and learn bahasa. But it also meant that Sabah Sarawak could not have our vernacular schools. So we were meant to have Kadazan and Iban schools, you know. And then what happened with the Borneo Literature Bureau is that apparently this is what I read in an essay, in an academic essay. But I've also spoken to people in Sarawak themselves. They came in and they took our books and they burnt them. They came in and they took our books and they burnt them, and they replaced it with another publisher lah. I mean, that's heartbreaking, right? We don't know these things were done to us.
Who are they?
Says the essay. So
okay. Oh my God.
So if you go to
yes. Yeah. Okay. Shit. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been to the. I hope that Sarawak doesn't kick me out. I love Sarawak. Okay, this is all for us when I say these things. Okay, but I was there one time just doing research, and I went to the. And they have an excellent library. Actually, I wish we had our own, you know, over here. That is just like, you know, a one-stop center for, you know, Borneo punya story and histories lah. But yeah, so they had like one glass case there with all the Borneo Literature Bureau books under lock and key. And by that time, I already knew about it. And if you go online, you can find blog posts talking about the books being collected and burnt. A lot of people takut to talk about it because they say it's sensitive lah. But I did kind of ask. I said, is there a reason why all of this is under lock and key? And they're like, they just nod. So why is it and so what I've also read,
are they copies?
Yeah, I have some copies also. But imagine that we have to buy the books. Like if you look for it online, can got some copies as well. You have to go, you know, the people who collecting these books are from the US, but I have to buy all the way from the US again just to go and get my culture back again. But
fuck, man.
That's why it's called epistemic violence. It's a kind of violence, you know, because that's why it's so hard for us to even learn about our tattoo history or, you know, and things like that. Sabah especially, compared to Sarawak, we don't really have many resources for our visual culture because we were run by the British North Borneo Chartered Company. You know, the Brooke family is still like, okay, kasih susun sikit, but we were not, macam Sabah macam terbiar ba, or North Borneo pun terbiar ba in that respect. So that's why I'm fascinated with the idea of, you know, like how do we visualize a Sabahan identity, you know, so even like, for example, like even film and what I do lah. So in 2012 also, going back to talking about last week earlier, with Katak and I, you know, like we were really struggling. Like dia pun at the time, he just came back from KL, he was working there, but just to find 2 C stands was hard. Just to get equipment was hard. The first place that I managed to find somebody who can sponsor our equipment. But the thing is, like, the guy at the time, it was in Karamunsing ba, and it was not an equipment rental place. It was actually, they were doing like security cameras, but people kept asking them for film gear, so he started to get like some stuff from China, which is like not so great quality. But he was nice enough to sponsor us lah. But even the gels and everything like that, he said, okay, return it, or like, kalau kau guna satu kali, you know, we have to explain back to him it doesn't work like that lah. And it was such a struggle because most of our crew, and we're trying to do like this, you know, this genre film, it was a spaghetti western, were mostly not experienced, but, you know, my mom was my production manager, which she was great at, you know, but at the same time, like, I was always looking over my shoulder to see, do people know how to shoot? I'm teaching them while I'm like trying to direct 11 children at the same time. Correct ko. And it was hurtful because the quality of my productions dropped compared to like the stuff that I was shooting in Australia. And then when I brought that stuff to KL, they don't understand the context, so they tengok technical saja. And saya rasa macam malu lah. I felt shunned, you know. I had people going like, oh, Nadira doesn't know how to direct actors. For the longest time, some people like held that stigma on me. And I'm like, you have no idea that how, macam, you know, we don't have those same resources here. And it was such that this is also something that people are kind of like talk about or hush-hush about. But we know that in the 70s, Victor Wa had made a series of documentaries about Sabah for RTM. But then all of a sudden there was a gap. And I believe reading Fausto Barloco's books, Fausto Barloco writes about media and nation building. This is an essay that I always refer back to. So don't kill me, you go find his article, like I'm just quoting it. But he said that in 1983 was when, you know, the Semenanjung punya networks like TV2 came in, and they said to Sabah Sarawak, you don't have to do your own productions anymore. So for 20 years, about 20 years, up until like Ampal and all those people, you know, like you had the technology to start shooting your own things. Because that back then was film. Even in the 80s, 90s, even in the early 2000s also people were still shooting on film. And so when they did their straight to DVD movies, it was revolutionary, because you had the technology to be able to, you know, do that and to be able to self-distribute. So that's why, like for me, saya bukan saja mau bikin film, tapi I want to break into mass media because those jobs belong to us. I'm a freaking Malaysian, you know. Why is it that kalau di Semenanjung semua besar, red carpet, everything, you know, theatrical release, dia cakap pasal box office ini itu, tapi kalau di sini, here's my DVD. You know, or sometimes that people here, they don't know about the culture of doing film screenings. It's actually really important to do film screenings and film clubs because you're building a community. But that's where I feel like that disparity lies lah. What does it mean when we talk about a film history in Sabah and Sarawak? Can it be necessarily called film or a cinema? Like, do we have a film or cinema industry when it's only this year's 2020, and this is the first time since Dedi M. Borhan's films in the 1980s that we have Katak Chua coming out with Craze Below the Wind, Mark Abbas coming out with Avakas. That's a really long time. That's a really long gap. So that means that if since 1983 until now, in my lifetime, there still has yet to be a Sabahan-made film for national theatrical release. And I'm a filmmaker. Yeah.
This is bleak.
But I'm very hopeful as well at the same time. So especially in the last couple of years because it's not just been the programming. To be honest, I do occasionally people have been making good short films from East Malaysia, but people have not known what to do with them. So sometimes you get, you know, like I hear from the older people, older filmmakers like Ho Yu Hang or whoever, he was like telling me last time in the 90s that him and Yasmin Ahmad actually saw this like Sarawakian short film, you know, that they really liked, but it kind of like disappeared into nowhere. And that's why I say it's really important to find where to situate your film or to explain to people what is the relevance of it. And so when I started to do the short film programs and screening them together, you know, actually I remember like one of my fondest memories also was that when there's this thing that was started by Tahuang called the Next New Wave. So it's actually a short film punya, or a young filmmakers punya development program. And that was the year that I met Putri, I think in 2016, Putri Purnama Sugua. And wow, she sapu, man. Like, she won that competition and then won the next level to Southeast Asia and then all the way, and she won that as well. And then gonna send to Busan for the Asian Film Academy, you know. But when I first met her that time, I was like, oh, who's this girl? I mean, and I was so excited because Bebra Charles Mylin also is another Sabahan filmmaker, but she's a lecturer at UiTM. But Putri and I were like more like in the industry. But Putri was already like, okay, sekejap di KL, then sekejap she'll like fly back to Sandakan to make her Sabah films. And I was so excited because then people looked at her and go like, and for the first time in years, Nadira's not crazy. This is a thing. Like how you saying that when we met at the Power to the People punya party kan, it was the same thing. But then it was kind of funny because I heard from somebody recently, they said that like, oh, when Putri came up, somebody said like, oh, but Nadira's gonna be jealous lah because she's not the only Sabahan filmmaker. And like,
what?
That's not my point.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's how stupid some people can be lah, or shallow, because if I don't
I hope it's just like one person lah.
We get a lot of other, it doesn't matter lah, the comments, but the thing is just like, I have never wanted to just like naik sendiri, because kalau saya naik sendiri, tiada guna ba, because crew, you need a whole team, you need a whole kampung to make a film. You really do, and then saya pun tidak puas hati ba kalau saya tengok, I think about, the films that I want to support, my friends I want to support, because I want to see those films, because I'm tired of watching status quo films, because I'm tired of tengok macam, menanjung saja, I want to see fresh stories. I mean, like minority stories just in general lah. Orang asli is lah gila, they don't get to command their own narrative. And that's really, really sad. So those are the stories I want to champion lah. But it's not easy lah. I'm still trying to find the balance, to be honest, between like doing the commercial stuff and doing that. I used to assistant direct a lot in KL also for like ads, short films, feature films also. So that's where I was getting my experience lah.
Were you like the go-to person when it comes to Sabah culture?
Yes. Pretty
For
much.
how long?
For many years. I think it only stopped like a couple of years ago. Then they started to discover more Sabahans.
So they go to you to learn how to use bah gitu?
Yeah, literally. But they won't hire me.
What?
They'll only call me as a fixer, but they'll never actually hire me for the job. And so every year, basically, if there is something to do with Sabah or Sarawak, I will catch wind of it because somebody will ask me for research.
What?
So
you should charge.
Yeah, I could, but then at the same time, it's just like they don't see the value of it, or sometimes it's much they think it's like I automatically know these things, but they don't see, like when I did a big story scan, I was driving up and down Ranau probably like 50 over times, but just by myself, to do this community project with the kampung and things like that. They don't realize the amount of reading that I've done, the amounts of books that I've gone through, like talking to orang kampung and all those things. But they don't even see the value of it because, they've got jobs all around, all year round. They just want, Kamatan and Gawa is just like another little thing on their blip. I just need to like get enough people. They think of us, it's almost like, they have people treating us like test, animals. Basically, they think that you can research our culture, but that taught me a lot, actually. I mean, I can't say that this is a good or bad thing because it taught me so much, and I feel like I'm a much richer person and an artist for it because I realized that film is actually about lived experiences. It's about lived experiences. Kau tidur boleh tiru ba? Like the feelings, the sights, and the sounds. Because film is not just a camera shot. It's like when you do set up a camera shot or like a mise en scène or anything like that, you're already deciding what is the emotion that I want to convey here. Whose perspective is it coming from? Is it from a child's perspective? Is it from a woman's perspective? I can tell very fast if a man has directed a female story. And I can tell very fast just by watching it, is this guy sexist or not? Just by looking at the content.
Wow.
And chances are when I meet them, spot on. You learn a lot about people's worldviews in that sense. Yeah. There's a lot of psychology behind it.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that people kind of hate that about me because you're like, wow, pretty good.
But then again, that's how you read these, like when you say mise en scène, I relate that a lot with theatricals. Like how you place yourself in the frame of a photo. And for you to read and understand the director behind it, that's something. I always thought like you do that to make it outwards. I didn't know it can be inwards, like it projects what you are.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely.
Kin takut siya?
No. But that's the beauty of it because a good short film or a good film or a piece of art, actually, just in general, that's why you're giving a piece of your soul every single time you make this film because people can see who people. I think a good film also when the people watch it, they get a sense of who you are. So I think I was in uni or something like that when the first time somebody said this to me. And they're like, Nadira, I have no idea what you're talking about, but when I watch your film, suddenly it makes sense. Like, I understand you now. And, you know, the idea of like where you're talking about earlier, you know, like when you feel so lonely and you feel crazy, you know, and you're trying to find your community and you're trying to find a gang. That's why I feel like very fortunate that even though film has been such a painful process for me, it's always been about the process of getting to know myself better and be more true and more honest to myself lah. And I'm really glad that I stuck with it, because apparently I'm Taurus, but that's why I was like, okay, stubborn, but it's like, okay, one track mind, itu saja, but like, because a lot of people, I think they tell me lah, you know, would have given up just trying to be themselves. But for whatever reason, that's the thing that has brought me to where I am today lah, I would have to say. But I celebrate that. And I celebrate the hardships, and I celebrate every single time I see, you know, other young filmmakers coming up who just want to have something to say. I mean, memang also I collect macam in my head, okay, who are the Sabahans and who are the Sarawakians, because these are the voices that I know what they are going through or what they might go through. So even last year as well, you know, I was like super excited because BMW Shorties, for the first time in so many years, I can't remember, 13 years they've been around. Second female director to win, and it was a fresh grad from Unimas, from Kota Marudu, who got the 80,000 ringgit film grant. It's the biggest.
Yeah, you shared that on Twitter.
Yeah, it's the biggest film grant in Malaysia lah. Short film grant at the very least, you know. And people loved her honesty. People loved Putri's honesty, and then Best of Film Kita between last year and this year especially. I was a judge for the first Best of Film Kita, and how it's evolved as well. Because Project Dialogue has always been like they have audiences in East Malaysia and West Malaysia juga kan. But nowadays, I think like out of the 7 grants that they have, it's not just that like Semenanjung will get 10,000, but like East Malaysia will get 12,000 because they have to fly back and logistics. And memang ulu ba some of the places they want to shoot. But out of the 7, I think about 3 or 4 will be for East Malaysians. Freedom Film Fest also, I mean, you know, I was quite proud of it lah, but I was the first East Malaysian to ever get the Justin Louis grant. And because of that, they tried to, out of the 3, they tried to reserve at least 1 slot for an East Malaysian story since then. You know, and so that's what the evolution has to be lah. And whenever you see a lot of these stories from Sabah and Sarawak, Sabah lah more happening, but people are drawn to them immediately, even in Semenanjung, because they realize that we have something to say, and we have something original to say. Why? Because turns out not having a film history works for us, because we're observing the world around us and talking about those experiences.
Take that. With a vengeance gitu kan. Tekan.
So it's always really interesting to hear how people respond to my films. That's actually my favorite part, to hear back how what people's thoughts are. But one of the because that's where I learn the most, you know. And I think like when Silent Riot just came out, it was a KK screening of it, and then there's this uni student that came up to me and he said, "Oh, thanks for the documentary. Saya tidak tahu yang Sabah ada sejarah. Bukan macam saya tidak tahu tentang sejarah Sabah, tapi saya tidak tahu yang Sabah ada sejarah." And I was like, crap. You know, when you look at the
This is a Sabahan student?
Yeah.
What the?
Because we don't have, you know, Sabah story, like Sabah's, you know, history is not in our books.
Yeah, true.
So that's
true.
why, you know, why I say macam people always think macam orang luar saja ba yang bagus. You know, and there are great dangers in not being able to command your own narrative. That's what I mean to say that, because it eats into their morale, and that's why I felt like a lot of my friends at the time kan macam like I said lah, you know, even though they come from good families, ada yang masuk gang lah apa, because they just did not know what to do with themselves, but their self-confidence was so low. You know, especially in this like digital world now where we're consuming so much content, and we consume too much of other people's content, it does create a sort of like depression. You know, it does affect people's mental health when they feel like there's not enough out there that belongs to them themselves. So it's good lah, memang that there's, you know, we have YouTubers, you know, people like you self-publishing and stuff like that. But self-publication doesn't pay nearly the same. The budgets are not the same. And by right, like we're Malaysians, where are our slots in Malaysian film and TV? You know, Malaysia's industry is still Malay, Indian, and Chinese. And even for Malaysia Day projects also, I get told don't do a Sabahan accent. Or they say don't make it too, or even Kamatan punya, ads when I wanted to propose like, oh, can we do like a karaoke style thing ka? Oh, this is for all Malaysians. Fuck anybody who doesn't like karaoke. Yeah, karaoke's the best, man. And I tell you, this one thing, whenever I go to film festivals as well, the thing that we always do when we're not like watching films, we're drinking and we're doing karaoke. So I was like, as a Sabahan, I'm like, I'm meant to be here, man. Aku jauh-jauh kena jemput pergi Italy juga for film festival juga, ada karaoke juga, but next to all the next to all the Renaissance paintings, and like I mean, at a film festival, and I'm just like, this is the life I was made for. As somebody who loves karaoke, all my kamatan, nyanyi di kampung paid off when I go overseas, Yeah, really. So yeah.
I said this just now when I was growing up. I always think that my culture is not how you say cool because of all these Hollywood semenanjung films. I always think that if I'm being dusun, if I'm being murut, if I'm being kita, kami, or I would say kalau saya jadi diorang, I won't be relevant. I won't be it won't be it won't be romantic. It will be funny. It won't, because when you say I love you in dusun, it will sound weird, and you just don't do that.
Yeah.
And lately I've been, there's this regret of putting my culture aside, putting even when I started painting, I followed all these idols yang saya rasa hebat from Western culture, from semenanjung Malaysia, and I feel like, okay, if you want to be a good artist, you need to be like them. You need to have their kind of touch, their kind of composition, their kind of mentality lah. Then you can sell these paintings, and more practice, I realized that this is bullshit. This is me being brainwashed by something that I don't see. And tonight when you say all these things, I realize like I've been messing up, and I didn't realize it. I never sedih lah. Macam all this while okay lah, you can say like kenapa dusun tidak tattoo, and when you say it's purposely erased by someone or some kind of an entity to make us forget about our culture, macam saya bersemangat terus ni macam like I said just now, like with vengeance. Now
yeah. That's what I'm saying, like we didn't have a Khmer Rouge, but we had that epistemic violence, or actually like it just goes back to when we talk about the formation of Malaysia. But I also I've been examining more closely as well the national cultural policy. Well, not national cultural policy actually, it's evolved a lot. I've not really been looking into that so much, but I've been looking at media and nation building. So there's also other social theory to kind of talk about like what happens when you build a nation. So we just celebrate, well, we're recording this, we just celebrated Malaysia Day yesterday kan. But then, books like Benedict Anderson's Imagined Nations talk about actually what is a country. A country is a piece of fiction in some ways, because a country is really it's not just like these borders that somebody went and put there, but then you have to brand a country, and that's where artists come in. So people always say to me, it's like, oh, Nadira, you know all this stuff, you should join politics. I don't want to join politics. You know why? Because at the end of the day, politicians need us. Because who's going to go and design their flags? Who's going to write, like the Rukun Negara? Who's going to write the national anthem and compose everything? Artists are the ones that give a nation a face.
We will give you our quotation, okay?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, kasi.
It's not free. It's not favors, okay, YB?
Yeah, bro. much. So, but once you have artists or people or society, self-actualize, that's when we can take our power back, really. And we have that privilege to be able to do this now. Our parents didn't have that. So another thing that has to change also in the mentality of our parents is like they have to, get out of that fear that there's still the ISA, because a lot of our parents being a generation.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, the Internal Security Act, like detention without trial. I was talking to some young people now who have no idea what that is. But once upon a time, you say the wrong thing, somebody will take you and just like put you in jail without trial. And just say that you're anti-Malaysia, you wanted to go and like, start an army in Pulau Gaya with like 26 Suluk people to take over Sabah. That happened to somebody. But yeah, things like that.
Yeah, that was our time. I was first year when all this reformasi happened, and I had no idea. It bumped me out because I couldn't go to the stationery store to get my art supplies, but that was it. I wasn't involved with all these social movements.
What year was that?
This was in 2001, 2002, those times. I forgot exactly when.
Why couldn't you get your art supplies?
Because most of the roads in KL closed down because of the Anwar Ibrahim punya.
Oh, reformasi.
Yeah, reformasi, and this riot.
In the 90s, 97.
There was one during the early 2000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then there was one riot in Kampung Baru or something. Sentul, or I forgot. And there was this all these race thing, and it was scary, confusing. At the same time, you couldn't go anywhere, and a lot of roads were closed, and shops, because of logistics, they're not selling anything. So that was like the longest 2 weeks of my life, and I didn't realize that, because I was Sabahan, and this is like when you're on KL, and I wasn't there lah, I wasn't present lah. But now thinking about it, like I could have done something cool then. But yeah, I just like ni hal dirang ni. I don't know. I should have mau tahu, but no.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean that's also another thing lah. People try to make they try to make it seem as though like politics has nothing to do with us lah. But I think in this generation, because like you said lah, we came back with a vengeance. So much I'm back on Twitter now after many years, and then I keep seeing like these young East Malaysians coming out with these long threads, about Borneo history, but and you never saw that before in our books or anything like that. But we're fighting a revolution, with history now, and that's why you see so many people who are like, becoming more young people who are joining politics because they know what has been done to us lah. Kenapa Sabahan Sarawak miskin and all these things, because the disparity is a bit too obvious to be able to ignore at this stage. Yeah.
I should edit this and publish this sooner. Before election. I mean, we're how you say? We're non-partisan. We're not telling you like.
I will say, don't vote for race-based parties or people who believe in ketuanan anything, but definitely keep your politicians accountable lah. I don't support any particular party, but there are candidates that I do like and who I think deserve the support. But otherwise, people really don't. I think people really need to allow it to sink in, like how dangerous ketuanan Melayu actually is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because also I was reflecting on it today. This is another thing that can be said to be quite contentious. But I mean, even how Malaysia was formed in the first place was because of Malayans were afraid of people in Singapore, or the Chinese population in Singapore. So they looked towards Borneo. They said that, like the natives of Borneo can be classified as Malays. And because of that, they conveniently used that to, form Malaysia together lah. But when they realize actually, oh, we're these like animist Christian, like wild people, and then after that they just went and, you know,
makan babi.
Yeah. You know, like that's what I find so funny about PAS, because PAS is always just like, during Kamatan and Gawai, it's always when they bring up this drink driving thing, and then they always like give Chinese people the side eye, and they look at the Borneo like Bumiputra people, and they're like, "Gun," and you're like, just don't sit with us, man. Like they don't get it, but like that we don't think that they're.
Oh
cool.
my god!
Yeah, they're like freaking losers, but it's PAS, you know. And but they always think that they can just like rub shoulders with us as Bumiputras, and we're like, no. So that's what I'm saying, like mistaking like natives in Borneo, Dayaks or whatever, as Malays is actually really dangerous. Because, I mean, like, we know, especially when you talk to our elders and things like that, you know, that there was mass Islamization in the 70s. Sampai 75,000, when I read the essays, these academic essays, I can cari balik. Don't sue me if I knew the references, okay, then we baca together, okay? But about approximately 75,000 to 90,000 Sabahans were converted into Islam. And time to in the 70s, macam berapa orang pandai baca, you know, like we don't even know what the literacy rates were back then. So a lot of people kind of get converted out and back again lah. You know.
Huh, funny ya. You don't read like Abjad Rumi. Apalagi kamu baca Quran kan?
Exactly. And so my aunt actually remembers that last time kan people didn't say yang dirang masuk Islam, dirang bilang dirang masuk Muis. That's how people are indoctrinated, bah. That's how ridiculous it was. And then there are stories also orang bilang macam, okay, ada orang they're converting people into Islam sana, and then so people pergi sana, and then they get a bit of money because the
50 ringgit.
I don't know, the story that my friend told me lah. My friend told me is like, oh, dia orang dapat 3 ringgit, lepas tu orang ambil, and then dia orang pergi beli stout, and then they come back the next day, masuk Islam balik, saja mau dapat duit lah, because they didn't know what it was about. This country's funny, man. It's like, it's messed up.
Okay.
But these are collective stories lah. I mean, I also don't know what are the parameters of it being safe for me to say any of these things. But at the same time, I'm also learning about the power of history and how history can be weaponized, whether by changing history, whether by controlling history, or whether by erasing it, that becomes so powerful. So that's why I would like to be able to encourage people, you know, like if I'm brave to save these things, and I hope other people can be too. But to do your research well, and to also collect all this data lah. Because even when I'm a filmmaker or a storyteller, it's not just that I make these stories, but I realize that my job is also to organize information. Whatever people tell me, I'm like, you know, but it has to be verified lah, to put all these things together. But it's a process. It really is just like a learning process. And then I think ultimately where I would like to be able to see ourselves is that Sabah or young Sabahans can start to think of ourselves as an intellectual society, a cultural society, a society that, you know, where we can also macam fight in healthy ways, but, you know, to be better people.
Do you see that, can I call it a circle? Do you see that circle of these intellectual young people growing?
I think this election, yeah, because there are all these like new NGOs coming up, and then the Sabah Bangkit video is like so damn cool. You know, and when you see more young people sort of taking back control of their narrative, it's heartening. Sometimes they think that, oh, I'm just making a film or I'm just making a music video, but I don't think they realize that when we take our power back, people outside realize that they can't mess with us, you know, and that they cannot tipu orang Sabah as easily as we could before. That Sabahan people cannot be bought.
What's your opinion on YouTubers in Sabah?
Yeah.
Do you see hope in this? I mean, I know film has this.
I just get annoyed when people confuse the two with where I'm concerned. You know, like I think YouTubers are great. I mean, like do your thing. But for me, my practice, kalau orang bilang macam, oh Nadira, are you still doing your little videos? Then it's like, no, because it is becoming a problem that even the institutions also cannot tell the difference between funding YouTubers and funding short films, and that is a problem because people who make short films are the future filmmakers, like for theatrical release. They're the ones that get the box offices. This is talking about your taxpayers' money. YouTube, you can monetize it. You know, you can get your sponsorship. It's just a whole. That's what I mean to say earlier. Like it's a whole other ball game. But when it comes to film, which is sastra, it's literature. It's a way for us to be able to understand ourselves better. You know, and it's about being able to sort of say something about ourselves in a more meaningful kind of way. But that's not being funded. There's more funding for PSAs right now for whatever reason than short films because people don't understand the form. And I think that's dangerous lah because like I said earlier, I mean, also we're not as exposed lah to watching so many short films. I also didn't get a very good education in that sense that, we watched a lot of feature films, but we didn't watch a lot of short films. And now I'm more exposed to short films and having been a judge, for short film competitions. I'm lucky, man, that I got called, to be a judge even for, for these competitions because up to now I've probably seen about 500 short films ish already, and that's what gave me the literature or the resource to be able to figure out this is how I do my next one. And when you do a short film well, the game would be, I mean the journey would be to submit to festivals, to maybe you can win some money, or to which will go to your next film, and you get to be exposed to a lot more varieties of films. People don't realize, or so I want to be, while I'm back in Sabah, be able to introduce people to Southeast Asian cinema, especially this is one thing, especially when you talk about, because you're very passionate about this also, and because of Anne, your wife as well, talking about the whole irregular migrant punya issue in Sabah kan. Man, for me, whenever I go to these film festivals, my best friends are Filipinos, man. Filipino cinema is so brave, it's so bold, they can talk about anything under the sun, and I think that's also where I got my courage from. But Thai cinema, Indonesian cinema has really helped me to get a better sense of who I am, in this Nusantara. So I also think that film is a really great way to humanize people. So in the sense that macam kalau orang cakap pasal racist inilah itu whatever, I'm like, man, if you watch Filipino films and you heard them speaking Tagalog, Bisaya or Cebuano or anything, you'd be like, wih, macam dusun lah.
Kan?
Exactly. So that's why film distribution is so messy, and how that sort of feeds into our prejudices and things like that kan, is because Mindanao is is there, and then got Manila, and they're only watching that kind of place. So when I was traveling there last year, the guy said to me, he's like, oh, you're from Sabah? I didn't know there are people there. And I'm like, oh, but I laugh at it lah. Yeah. So, I mean, film is a great way for people so that they can see human beings as themselves. I was watching this really cool episode it's from a program from Indonesia lah, macam sa Rencana TV saja lah. But they were talking about how Timorese comedians were changing the way that the rest of Indonesia saw Timorese people. Because sini pun we're so horrible to them, cakap omla, whatever lah, that kind of thing. But when I was talking to my Timorese gardener here kan, and then I was asking him about where do you come from? Tell me what your kampung is like. Because it's a bit stupid lah. Here we treat them as immigrants, tapi when we go backpacking to their countries, it's so freaking exotic kan. So he was telling me a little bit. Well, I mean, these are the things that need to be overcome, and this is why I believe in cinema and visualizing our experiences. But so I was asking him about where he's from. He's like, oh yeah, and then he was talking about Dorong punya Raja and all that stuff, and I'm like, oh, we think of this guy just as a gardener, but he has this whole kingdom. He came from a kingdom. I said that's legit cool, So I like to always be able to, why I love having these resources, it just makes me think about people differently or our stories differently. It helps to humanize that experience. I wish that we got to watch more Filipino films here, or what I like to introduce because we would find kindred spirits in them, honestly.
Mat, kau kasih tau dia, leluhur kau dari mana?
Nah, Eropa.
Yeah.
Nanti kita cerita.
Okay. Malu-malu pula.
Yeah, so that stuff is important lah.
Yeah. Lama kah? Macam
When do we start?
3 kali
It's
sama berarti.
9.
4 kali. Shoot. Okay.
Do you want to wrap things up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So where I am at now is that, so I've been away from Sabah for almost a year now, and then it's because in last August I shot my short film, and then so last August I shot my short film Tadaw Ang Vuhan Kopi So Omo, which is in English, Where the Sun and the Moon to Meet, and Yeah, so but then I had to go back to KL at the time. I'm still half and half between here and there, but I was really fortunate because after being a judge for BMW Shorties for 3 years, they hired me to, well, Urbanscapes actually hired me to program their film festival, and it was the coolest thing ever. It was super cool. Like before, when I did big stories in Ranao, like we organized when we finished doing the community films, because we kerjasama dengan community untuk like to tell their own stories through short documentaries and photos. We had the premiere for 1,000 people in the kampung, so that was really fun.
That.
Yeah,
love it.
Well, I mean, were you there? I can't remember.
No, I wasn't there.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, it was, but like, to be able to do this other film festival at Rex KL, like, because I still was struggling with my imposter syndrome at that time, like I had been shunted by a lot of people who said like, you don't know how to direct lah, kau bising saja lah, kau begini lah, your documentary's not so good lah, all this stuff, like, which really like killed my spirit, but for a long time, But then when it came to Tayangan BMW Shorties, it's like Urbanscapes, they called me, and it was exciting because I felt like, okay, I don't have to be a Sabahan filmmaker, I can just show people that I know my stuff when it came to films, and it was done at Rex KL, which is like the old bare bones macam Rex Cinema kan, and we basically had to like build our whole film screen again. We had to set up the projector. We had to set up all like
Rex KL yang dekat Petaling Street?
Yeah.
That one?
Yeah. So that main hall, like, for 9 days, like we had a film festival there, which I programmed. I chose most of the films because I was the only film person on the entire team. But I did call in my friend Elise, who works for Kuman Pictures, to assist me juga lah. But so we did like a Southeast Asian genre film festival, but it was just really fun because on one night we had like Aliens versus Zombies. Another night we had Cambodia nostalgia because it was like Cambodian documentaries, and we also did the workshops and talks and things like that, and that gave me a lot of my confidence back in saying that, hey, I know how to do this. And it was tough because like I was also moderating most of the talks, for all of the filmmakers, and I can't remember now, we had about like 19 films that screened, and then but we also had the short films. I don't remember the numbers now, and then when BMW Shorties, the competition itself, the day itself, it wasn't just that Ikin Ki Charles won best film, but Putri also won best director. So itu pun I got flack from some people because they're like, oh, it's just because Nadira's there. I'm like,
Okay.
No, it's okay. They can say that all they want, but it's also because the films were good. The other judges, there are 4 other judges there. The other judges were the ones who were fighting for them. So the last 3 years I spent going like, can we have East Malaysian stories in the top 10 at the very least? Wow, the top 2 by women somehow. A lot of the strong Sabahan voices are in film actually women. Yeah. Because that talent is undeniable, like they're just really smart. So it was crazy because I didn't even have to fight for it. The other judges were fighting about like, okay, which story, like should win. They were fighting because they were supporting the Sabahan story, and I just had to sit back and watch. I'm like, this is so beautiful. It's so beautiful right now. Like I have arrived at a point where I don't have to defend my culture, so much. I mean, sometimes I wish that I can't do this, but like, like I wish I could sort of protect people from having to deal with racism of any sorts, but I'm also just, screw that lah. That's not the point. The point is that there are really cool films and resources for us to watch, for your daughters to watch, for your kids to watch, like for the next generation to be able to view. And that's so exciting. But then also, so yeah, I was in KL that time, and then memang I was going to do my post-production there lah. But then MCO hit, so that delayed our production. So itu yang susah. I couldn't come back to do my ADR, my additional recording.
Okay.
But we had a very strong team lah, all together. So that's the new short film that's coming out, and now I'm also working on trying to build up my production company, the Bulan Bulan Films.
I love that name.
Yeah, thank you.
I always like, why do they come up with such?
Do you know where it's from?
No.
It's from the Cerita Tarob.
What was that?
Okay. So this is where I've also been trying to like go around and collect our folklore and things like that. And so my mom had told me lah about the tarab, or kalau di Bingkul dia panggil like si Arab or barab. Yeah. Pernah dengar kan?
Barab tau.
Ya, barab.
We heard.
Yeah, so orang dulu kan dia percaya macam kalau ada macam gerhana matahari ataupun gerhana bulan kan, it's because like, there's this monster called Barab who went around and just like was a greedy monster and swallowed everything in his path. You know, and then including the sun and the moon, and whenever they do that, orang kampung people will just like come out and bang pots and pans, gongs. In Tambunan, they believe that if you make a wish, you know, you can Tarab will spit out anything that you desire. So you'd be like, Barab bisa mau motosikal, and Barab will be like, motosikal, you know, and with the moon, you know, for example.
Okay.
But it's also a play on words of terang bulan. Because the song is our national anthem is sort of like much older than that, but with but the Indonesian title of it is Terang Bulan. So it's like in a way reclaiming the Malaysian identity, but also getting agency, because agency is really apa yang di dalam hati kau, apa kau punya aspirasi. That's how you truly humanize a person. So that's what I guess our company and philosophy is about lah. I mean, I don't know if I can always afford to just like do minority stories. At the end of the day, I just want to do cool like arty shit, like not artsy lah, but like really like cool stuff. You know, it's not all just at advocacy and documentaries and that kind of thing. You know, but I would also definitely like to, because I started producing also like last year for other people. I produced Bebra Charles Marlin's like Nina Vau under my company, and then that was a Kadazan language film that won Best Short Film at MIFFest. You know, and then Bron Palare and Sharfa Amani were also among the judges, and I think maybe Namron also.
That was a very kick-ass film.
Thank you.
Very, very. This topic, what? Like,
yeah. So I mean that topic gets covered a fair bit, but like so just in general, I like the idea of. Kalau si pasang TV kan, boring. Pernah tengok sudah ni cerita, apa yang si mau tengok? That looks like a cool story. I want to make that. Or that's a person that has never had a voice. How can we help you have a voice? Because that's going to change your life. So that's, I guess, the philosophy that we kind of go by.
Shit, I had like tons of story ideas. Now sitting here like satu hilang ni, and that's no, don't go with that. No.
No, my advice is always like you look at apart from the stories that you have, but you look at the resources that you have. Yeah. So that's also one tricky thing. Like why I say Southeast Asian cinema is powerful is because if you watch just Hollywood films, then you think that you have to do a Hollywood style budget to go and make that stuff. But do you have the resources? No. You know, but when you watch Southeast Asian films, especially the films like I feel personally, the ones yang dari Mindanao semua kan, you see the small budgets that they have to work with, and you see how similar their culture is kan. Then I'm like, oh, okay, you can actually, this is how you can sort of like play around with the budgets or with the story to come up with something really powerful. So that becomes a reference point. Yeah. So you're not trying to like sit here and make Pirates of the Caribbean, you know, when you don't even have 2 C-stands. You know.
Then I feel like after you saying this semua ni, I feel like there's so many things under my nose that I haven't been seeing. Like all these stories that my mom told me. I mean, you met my mom.
She's cool.
Yeah, she is.
Okay, so this is Sip Igan. I sipon with your mom already. Sisipon. Yeah, then sisipon with your mom. Now I sip Igan. Yeah, funny.
Yeah, there's so many things that we overlook because of. I cannot say that I blame other people for brainwashing me. I guess now that we've learned, we are educated, we are civilized. It's time to take a step back.
We're so civilized. I mean, like,
yeah.
I mean, we were always civilized, but it's just like civilization from somebody else's yardstick is very damaging. So I mean, like, when you're an animist, you're extremely civilized because you believe in protecting nature.
True.
That's the most civilized thing that you can possibly do. Tapi macam when people think civilization is a skyscraper, it's just like that's or having LRTs in Sabah. Let's not have LRTs in Sabah, please. Buses, like our buses have been the same like since for the last like they're older than me also, but yeah. So it's really important that we understand that development should happen within our own measure, and that's why I said that we have to know ourselves, know what we have to offer in order to do that, and we're not just copying other people. And that's why I say it's very important to keep our politicians in check, because to a certain extent sometimes the politicians can only do as far as we ask them to do, but sometimes they get misinformed also about what we need, like the Papardem, for example. We shouldn't go ahead, we should be doing reservoirs.
Use the t-shirt.
Yeah. Kind of. But things like that because we need to hold on to our Sabahan identity in that respect, and that comes also in the decisions that we make for the future of Sabah. Suddenly
pasang Sabatan airku.
Yeah, suddenly I heard Sabatan airku like in my head also.
Okay lah.
Yeah.
Nad, thanks for this one.
Oh, it was so much fun.
This is like I always thought Barab is like someone yang really gumok and eats everything in the drawer.
Itu godot.
No, we use Barab juga.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Kan itu cerita pun dia makan.
Saya tahu.
Yeah. But I tried to figure out what it looks like. So every time I go to a different kampung, I try to ask different people macam apa cerita Barab. But I did find it in Ranau, what it looks like. I'll show you. I send you one of the films later. It's we do not want to forget how our ancestors find food, and it was one short documentary that we shot in Bangkud. So I sent my cameraman, kau pergilah, go shoot with the guy kasi dia masuk ke hutan kan untuk merambat. And then I was like editing, saya nampak balik merambat fish. Oh, it's like a little silver fish with a black spot there. Oh, ini Barab. Orang dulu bilang yang ni dia pandai makan bulan. And it was I'm like looking high and low. What does this big ass like monster look like? And it was a tiny little silver fish with a black spot on it. That's why we're magic, and we're civilized people.
Yeah.
Because we paid attention, and we listen to nature, and that's why we need to come back to.
With a vengeance.
With a vengeance, to love ourselves. It's called self-love. Like just love ourselves in our culture, but don't think that we're better than other people, because that's when people get racist. Yeah.
No, we Sabahans, we cool, chill. We got lihing, we got siopon for everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone. Yang tidak boleh minum di depan orang, we got the kitchen.
And it's, all the fantasy as well. It doesn't have to just be Marvel films or all that stuff. Like, we have our own, original superheroes as well.
Oh, yeah, true.
Like Gayatas, I don't know. Should I go into that? But yeah, we had a female headhunter that took 70 overheads.
Let's do that in a different
Yeah, that's
time.
a different day, sorry. But there's just so many cool resources for these stories, and so it's really important, especially when you come from oral traditions, to just be able to learn, observe, and listen, and then use that as our inspiration. And don't be discouraged for not knowing, because you have to use that as a sign to just go and do it anyway. Yeah.
Oh. This is what happens when I sit with Nadira. I get schooled. Terus kau jadi student ni.
No, I've learned a lot from you as well. I liked your talk the other day at the workshop. That was really good. Yeah.
Really?
We all learn from each other.
I guess.
Yeah, we do. That's why we have a community lah. I got you, bro. Got you, Tapinay.
Okay lah. Bye-bye lah. Thanks, man.
Yeah,
thank you for this. Thank you. Cerita macam nak end. Like I still want to consume all this info. For you guys yang lagi mau connect with Nadira, or you want to connect with us, do comment below if that's your thing. Kalau kamu kenal, because I think the circle of my viewers masih lagi yang kawan-kawan, and just connect with us, see what we can do after this. Maybe we do an underground film screening. I don't know.
You can. But till then, also, I mean, you guys can follow me. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram as well as Feistgeist, Feistgeist, and then my production company is Telan Bulan Films. So we've got a website, telanbulanfilms.com, and yalla.
Senang kerja dah dia. I forget all these things and she's like, ada checklist dalam otak dah. Bah, okay lah. This has been Sip Sip with Egan and Nadira and Cinta Leong and Ate. So we end now lah. Ciao. Bye bye.